Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Station 11, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, I've never read the novel that this is based on, but the only thing I ever saw was the teaser trailer, which gives you an idea of what to expect from the show, but it gave you the general premise, but I never watched the full trailer, so I don't know fully what to expect. But it seems like it's about, I guess, one specific story, because I thought we're talking about a group of stories, almost like an anthology, in a sense, we're following so many different stories after this apocalyptic event, essentially. Because basically we're picking up a couple days, well, a little bit before things went sideways. It's interesting, the time frames in which to jump around. I mean, first and foremost, the scenery, especially after the fact, you definitely get some Last of Us vibes, which is interesting considering HBO is doing a adaptation of The Last of Us, so I think that's so interesting. But especially when everything's so overgrown, and that's when they were jumping around time frame wise, I'm like, would that be enough time? Because I mean, for The Last of Us to look the way it does, it took, well, to be fair, we jumped there 20 years into the future, but I'm like, how long did it take in between to get to that? But I'm like, that's a lot of grown vegetation, a lot of plants and everything that look rusted and dystopia, degraded the way it has. It's not dystopia, but well, yes, dystopia, but degraded the way it is. It seemed like that would take a lot of time, wouldn't it? So, but it's because they make it clearer later on. It's not until the end that they make it a little clearer, just at least that a good chunk of time has passed. But regardless, we get introduced to Jeevan, and he's just some dude at a play, a King Lear play, and the dude on stage, Arthur, has a heart attack, and Jeevan's the only one that noticed it, and everyone's like, the person he's with, it's his girlfriend Laura, being like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, he's having a heart attack, and then the dude does. I was like, is he, I'm assuming it's tied to maybe not, I don't know. I don't know if that's supposed to be tied to what's happening throughout the rest of the episode with the flu, or is it just, that was just an isolated event. But the thing is that Jeevan was able to recognize it and no one else did. And he ran up to the station. I was like, oh, he must be a doctor. But he was like, is there a doctor in the house? I was like, and I love the conversation comes, wait, you're not a doctor? Then why'd you? He was like, I don't know. So I was like, what made him decide to leap into action like that? Why did he do that? Because I was about to say, does he have medical experience and he's just scared? Or is it just because we find out later on his sister is in a medical field, Sia? So that's why I'm like, maybe because of that. Because I was thinking maybe he's known someone that died from a heart attack, so he knows what the signs are, so he wanted to leap into action. And, but it's the question does come up later on of why did you do that? And it's why, you were the only one that noticed. He was like, no, I'm just the first one that stood up. Meaning other people probably noticed too, but no one, it might be that, it seemed like he was almost implying that bystander effect when people see something terrible happen, a group of people, but everyone's under the assumption, oh, someone else is going to do something. And so he's like, everyone else, other people notice, I'm just the first one who stood up, so I thought that was interesting. But yeah, turns out Arthur ended up dying, I think, then and there, because they're trying to get a defibrillator to resuscitate him, and the cop is asking him yo, are you a doctor or something? He's like, no, I just knew he was having a heart attack. And he sees Kirsten by herself, and it's like, oh, are you okay? It's like, yeah, it's like, she's part of the play and everything, so even asking if Arthur's going to be okay, and then he's like, I don't know, but I mean, if he dies, at least he died doing what he loves, right? And she's like, yeah, I love acting too, and he's just kind of yeah, okay, it's good to have something that you love. It was kind of an awkward conversation, because it's right, because I don't want to make it sound right, doing what you love, that you're gonna die. I mean, hopefully you live a long life. You hear stories about that, people having heart attacks on in the middle of a stage play and stuff like that. That's ugh, that's. I think there's even a story where, I want to say it was Ethan Hawke. He's told a story on talk shows before where the person, I think it was him that told a story about someone dying on stage but being resuscitated in time or something. I don't know if they died, but they stopped breathing for a second, but then we were able to come back. I think this is something I remember hearing, I think years ago. It might have been Ethan Hawke, it might have been someone else that talked about this, but regardless, tensions and all that aside, why Jeevan took it upon himself to look after this little girl, who knows? Whatever instinct just kicked in. He was like, all right, I'm gonna help you find Tanya, because Tanya's the one that looks after you while you're here. And so it is kind of jacked up of Tanya to kind of leave you with no one. She didn't put you in anyone else's care. That's kind of messed up. And Jeevan's like, wait, isn't someone supposed to be here with you? It's like, yeah, but it's Tanya. It's like, well, where's Tanya? She's in the ambulance with Arthur. And I'm like, I get it, that's your significant. At the very least, you would assume that you do the responsible thing. It's like, I'm gonna bring you with me, but I guess it's like, right, she was so caught up in the moment she didn't. Not unless that's supposed to be indicative of like, that's what I thought that's meant, but now I'm sitting here talking about it out loud. I'm like, most likely it's like, no, stupid. She probably passed out too and ended up in the ambulance. So it's like, right? Like, it feels so weird that there's no backup yet. Talk to anyone else. It's like, okay. And Jeevan's like, fine, I'll take you to your house. Like, make sure you get on the L train so you can get to your house. And she's like, but Tanya told me not to like talk to strangers. He's like, hi, I'm Jeevan. You're Kirsten. So like, right, we're not strangers. Come on. You know? The moment he tried to call Laura, she had texted him, which I love. He was like, yeah, crazy what happened. That guy died. But she was like, yeah, see me back home and stuff like that. I wasn't feeling well. I was like, oh, that's not a good sign. So he's on the train with Kirsten. And, well, I think before they got on the train, she was asking questions about, like, what he does for a living and stuff like that. It's like, oh, do you have a job? And he's like, oh, yeah, well, he sounds like someone who would have a job, like, online that just doesn't know how to describe it. He's like, no, I was a reporter. And I was like, then he was like, critic. I was like, oh, you like a website movie critic or something like that? Like, it seemed like that might have been what he was trying to imply, but it's like, how do you explain that job? I watch enough YouTube to know, like, yeah, that's a job for people, like, you know? So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, that, you know, but he's just dancing around. He's like, well, I had a website and I don't have a job. I'm like, I find that funny. I guess because he was trying to, like, give himself maybe a more modern job, because later on he's talking to Sia about getting fired from the flower. He's like, sorry, I got fired from the flower shop or something like that. So not less like the website stuff was kind of like his side business or something, or it was his main job, but it kind of imploded. I don't know, like I said, I don't know whether he was just trying to connect with her or he was just legitimately talking about like, no, it was my job and I don't have a job. But yeah, his sister Sia, which interesting enough, I'm blanking on her character's name. She was in The Good Place. That actress, I've seen her in something else and I can't remember what it was. It was something, I feel like it was something more recent. I haven't seen it in a while. I don't remember if it was something like A Million Little Things, because I still need to catch up on that. I'm super, super far behind. It was something else I saw her in. I just can't place what it was. I know her from The Good Place, but there was something else. But yeah, like Sia had called him to warn him about this. It's like, don't believe the news. Like don't believe the WHO. Like they're lying about how bad this is. He's like, because it's something that started in Europe, but they got someone from Moscow, and it's like things are bad. And it's like, all right, get to Frank's and stay there, barricade. Like hit me up on like the Chandri like kind of text chain that they have, and let me know you got there. It's at the moment you're kind of like. Even he's kind of getting freaked out. He's starting because she tells him an old story just to calm him down because she could tell he's having a panic attack. And I think it is a situation of like the way she was talking about it made it seem like she knew she wasn't going to make it. I guess because she herself is already around enough sick people that she's like, I don't want to take the chance. I'll come there and contaminate you. So obviously, Kirsten got off the train when Jeevan did because she was like, "What's up? Like, what's going on?" And he's like, "Right, is your place nearby?" And she's like, yeah, it's pretty far away because we got off the wrong place. But the moment she gets to our house, sadly, her parents don't answer. And it's like, do you have a key or something? It's like, yeah, but Tanya does. And he's like, fucking Tanya. It's like, yeah, now I feel bad because like I said, the entire episode I was like, man, Tanya's kind of a dick just rolling off like that. And then, like I said, not until I start talking about it, it's like, oh, it's probably being indicative that she actually passed out too. So that's why I'm like, maybe the whole, like, I mean, the sickness was probably already spreading at that point in time, but it's like, right, like, Jeevan's like, I can't just leave you here. It's like, oh, what about neighbors? It's like, my dad don't like the neighbors. What about those neighbors? They're old people. It's just like, Jesus, he's like, is there anyone that knows about your existence I could drop you? It's like, fine, come with me as I kind of run an errand. And so he's trying to make her feel okay, being like, no, everything's fine. It's like, oh, what did you and your sister talk about? And he was just like, do you like Yahoo? It's like, that was too long of a talk. And he's like, no, like, do you want Yahoo? And she's like, I can't have sugary stuff even on like the weekends and stuff. And so he's getting a Yahoo, and then it comes back to the whole chocolate thing and the strawberry thing again. And he's staring at it, and he's like, right about now, I would be having a panic attack. But he's like, I already did that back there. He's like, it's almost like I planned it out. And so he ends up checking out a whole bunch of stuff. Like what? He gets like probably like over half a dozen like carts full of stuff. And even the guy, I even love it. It's like it's stacking up. I was like, that's a lot of stuff, dude. And it's like almost $10,000 worth of groceries. And he pays it. And then the guy was like, hey, like, you know, it's actually, the scene's in the trailer. And he's like, oh, should I go somewhere? It's about this flu stuff. He's like, yeah, just go home. Which even Kirsten's like, what were you talking about that guy about going home? It's like he was saying like things are like really bad. There's the flu and everything. And he's like, my sister told me where to go and stuff like that. So he's like, right, at the end of the day, it's your choice. She's like, but I'm 8 years old. He's like, I know, but you have to choose whether you're going to come with me to my brother Frank's, or because I didn't realize at first Frank was their brother until like we cut the Sia situation where she was like, right, like their brother like won some like big time award, was like a Pulitzer. He won something at like 23, but she's like, yeah, I called the brother that owes me like 18 grand. So it seems like he's kind of the slacker, which I'm sure you can draw some parallels to at least what I know of Why the Last Man from the TV show. Not the once again, just interesting timing because like that's like a Vertigo property and that's under the vein of the DC, which is under, you know, Warner Brothers. So that was kind of interesting timing. Just a lot of, once again, I'm also curious, throwing it out there, how people are going to feel about that considering the real world situation. Like, you know, it's just like, this timing, though. It's like, well, you know, virus-related stuff is always going to happen, but I don't know how people are going to feel about that. Like, how do people feel about the Why the Last Man? Yes, this is based on a book that was probably written years ago. That was based on a comic that ended years ago. You know, so that's the complicated thing of like, yeah, it's just, I mean, who also knows how long this was in the works before it actually got made, you know, before, like, they actually went into full-blown filming production. Like, who knows, like, if this was something that was in the process of being, like, produced and stuff like that years before it actually started getting made. But nevertheless, it just, you know, my mind wanders with stuff like that. Whether that hits a little too close to home for some people, and it's just like, you know, for some people, even we're still kind of going through it even now, nearing the end of 2021. So for people, it's like, I mean, obviously this is like the being like, yeah, this is like a lot of people are dropping dead type of situation. Once again, like The Last of Us type of thing, just like the Why the Last Man. There's a lot of death in that regard, but you get what I'm saying. Like, so it's not as close to home, but it's still kind of like, why would I want to watch something that's kind of going through it a little bit, you know? So maybe there's an angle to that I'm curious, like how people would be receptive to that, but, or rather whether or not they'd be receptive to it. But at the end of the day, though, circling back to it, the whole Sia thing about her at the hospital, and we see that the hospital is overrun, and we do see at one point in time she's coughing, so whatever it is she's potentially got. And obviously it's the conversation about like, right, like they thought that a certain thing would help with this, but the person who took it died. It's like, well, wouldn't you rather die thinking the thing you took is actually going to help you? Like, you know, would that ease your mind at some, you know? But yeah, it shows you just like how overrun the hospital is, how crazy this situation has gotten, how bad things have gotten. Because even that dude rolled up and was like, oh, like he's got carrying someone in his hands, and he's just like, hey, like where do I take her? You know, so it's pretty bad. But Jeevan was talking to Kirsten about, like, right, you have to choose. And it's like, right, you can either come with me or go home. And she's like, I'll go home. Because he's like, I could call you a cab. And just when she was about to walk away, she was like, it's nice to meet you. And he was like, hey, sorry, I just got in contact with Frank. Like, it turns out, hey, your parents know Frank. They're at the lake. And so they just wanted you to know, like, they were okay. So it's okay for you to come with me. And she's like, okay. And the thing is, did Jeevan do that for her sake or his sake? Or both? Because it's like, right, I don't want to leave you alone, kid, with everything that's going on. Two, I also don't want to be alone while going through this, because maybe having her around has helped him. Like, it's just like, right, you know, it made him kind of feel like, right, I have something else to focus on, someone other than myself to focus on, so it's keeping me from panicking and losing my grip. So they take the carts all the way to Frank's place, which I love. It was actually super adorable. The whole thing of like, right, Frank's brother, this is his niece, or my niece, and on the phone he's like talking, he's like, hey Frank, and then like Kirsten and me like, hi Uncle Frank. I'm like, that's super adorable. But it's like, yeah, go ahead, make your way up, and they do. And on the way up, like, oh, it's like this lady, which I'm like, that actress seems familiar. I just can't place where I feel like I know her from. But she was like, oh, like, I think I'd squeeze in. He's like, no, it's full in here. He's like, it's fucking full. And then, like, and she's kind of like, oh, like, what the hell? And the door closes. And, because they had actually run into someone, like, outside, or at least near the building, someone that was in the car. At first, I was like, oh, is that going to be Frank? But the person started coughing, and then Jeevan, like, shut the door. He's like, don't open the door. I'll call an ambulance. I'm like, did you actually call an ambulance? I'd like to think you did. But it's like, oh, like, don't go near them. Because he had told Kirsten earlier, like, no, everything was wrong. Like, hey, like, I was wrong. I was wrong about, like, oh, the world isn't, ending and stuff like that. But the moment they got to Frank's place, because Frank is, I guess he's been so caught up in work, whatever that is, he hasn't looked at the news. He hasn't looked at, he hasn't checked his phone, because I was like, your brother's probably been blowing you up. Sia probably has too, but, like, Jeevan's the only one who actually answered his phone. I'm like, you picked the worst time, it's just like, but I mean, it goes from 0 to 60 just like that. It's just like, you pick the worst time to not want to pick up your phone. And so it's like, right, brought all this stuff, and he's like, whoa. It's like, wait, hey, bro, wait, hey, little white girl, like, who is this? It's like, yeah, this is Kirsten. And she's like, hi. It's just like, yeah. It's like, wait, how do you know my brother? Oh, we met at the play. It's just like, strange, weird circumstances. But he was like, dude, the world is ending. And he turns to Kirsten, I'm sorry I lied about it, but yeah, the world is ending. Because there was also another situation where we checked in with someone else. It was a dude calling on Arthur's behalf. It's like letting people know that Arthur died. And I guess it was about Arthur's funeral or whatever. I feel like that was a little too quickly for that to, so not unless it was someone else's funeral, but it's like, oh yeah, like so-and-so, the person that was with him was like, yeah, I can't get 2 weeks off, and I'm like, oh, he's like, no, I completely understand. He's like, this is my weight, this is kind of my burden to bear, like, I shouldn't share this weight, kind of slaps him on the arm and just walks away. I'm like, it is kind of dickish of you to be like, I can't take two. I mean, I don't know what the circumstances are, but just that slice of the conversation makes you go, kind of a dick move. It's like, oh, I want you to be there and support, because he's like, I'm sorry, but it's your friend. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, couldn't you be here for emotional support? Because he immediately went to the fridge, got some liquor, and started drinking. And he was like tired by news. He's like, screw this, blah blah blah. And he puts his headphones on. It's like, once again, it's just like, yeah, he's going through it right now. So for him, it's just like, I'm so caught up in my situation. Who cares about the rest of the world? Very human, like sometimes we get so caught up in ourselves, we don't really pay attention to all that's going on around us sometimes. So that was kind of a neat little introduction there. That's why I was like, that's why it feels like it's going to be multiple stories, but I'm not quite sure. We'll get to the ending, which kind of like made me go, oh, interesting. So regardless, as like, Frank and his brother are talking it out about like, shouldn't you be watching the news about everything that's going on? Because he's like, oh, the flu? Like, oh, that's what this is. Like, no, bro, this is like so much worse. And then it's like they hear a sound and it's a plane crashing, and we see like a nearby area, especially a Ferris wheel caught on fire, and it's like, oh, whoa, okay, things just got crazy. Yep, this is some apocalyptic level stuff. It's like, right, we should go find Sia. And he was like, Sia told me to find you and then barricade. And he looks out in the hallway and closes the door. Because we had that little blinking light thing, kind of almost like, right, as in most apocalyptic situations, the power's going to go out. Because we had saw that inkling earlier when they went to Kirsten's house, and the fact is her parents weren't answering. I'm like, either her parents are out or separate somewhere else, or they're inside and they're dead. There's a strong possibility in that regard, so... Because her phone did die, but she didn't know her parent, because, she's a kid, so she doesn't know her parents' number off the top of her head, so she ended up not being, it's like, yeah, I know their number, but only when it's in my phone, and it's like, of course, so, and then we hard cut to 80 days after everything, like, they were locked. I don't know if that was their first time out in those 80 days or what, but like the fact is that Jeevan had a knife with him. I'm curious if Frank's just staying behind to make sure no one breaks in to steal their stuff. Like, once again, it's like, it's just like Why the Last Man. Once again, I'm using that as a reference because, one, I'm still just bummed that show got canceled, but also that it did that interesting thing of just kind of like, along with The Walking Dead, but you never get the time frame specifics of like, man, how much time has passed like that. Because like Why the Last Man took you through it in certain places. Like, yeah, it's been like a couple days. Now it's been like 60 some days. Now it's been like 90 some, so on and so forth, right? So I kind of got that type of vibe. But we don't know how often Jeevan and Kirsten have been out. So they're making their way outside. And the fact is, they walk past the security guard who's dead at the front desk means he died a while back. Two, the fact is he wasn't like Kirsten. Don't look. It's like they've had to like make this trek before because Kirsten she didn't like react too much to it, so it might have been something they've already seen. Because the thing is, like, why would you be leaving now after barricading yourself for like 80 days? So either that food all ran out. I mean, it's nearly 3 months that they were in there. So, like I said, who knows how often they've been in and out. But he was like, oh, let's go to the lake. So I'm assuming that's him keeping up the lie about her parents, like helping her find her parents, or maybe there's other reasons to go to the lake. That's what he kept saying. That's where her parents were. So I don't know if that's true. Like maybe he's hoping they can find her parents there. Maybe they did try the house again. And once again, we'll have to wait to see like how much gets filled in. But then we get that thing in space, and it's like, oh, I'm Jevin. I'm Kurt. Like, and you like hear Kirsten saying like, oh, like Raymond, her last name. And so I'm like, what's up with that? And then we come back to Earth. And then we see Mackenzie Davis, and I'm like, okay. And we hear the name Kirsten. I was like, what? I didn't. Oh my god! And it's like, okay, so that explains like the overgrowth. It's been some time. It's like, okay. So we're a huge time skip. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth across the timeline with this. I'm like, interesting. And I'm assuming that's going to apply to a lot of stories. Because there's certain things, because the Station 11 comes about because there's a comic book that someone wrote that, I don't know whether they were exes or whatever, but she was like, oh, I want you to have a copy. And she gave it to Miranda. And it's like, oh, and like, because Kirsten was there, and she's like, oh, who's that? And he's like, oh, this is the asshole who ruined my life. And you're like, what was that about? So, and Kirsten still has the comic, and even as an adult, she's reading it. But I'm like, because I knew Mackenzie Davis was in this because I saw her in the trailer, but I didn't realize that that's who she was playing. I was like, whoa, I didn't know I thought you were playing a different character. I never would have guessed you were playing an older Kirsten. Like I said, maybe the official trailer made it clear, but like I said, I've only seen the teaser trailer, which I'm kind of glad then. But I'm like, I'm so curious to see how this goes about, like, you know, like what happened in that time frame, like, you know, because someone's like, hey, we're doing, I guess, like, they're enacting a play, and I think that's something her and Jeevan did, so it's something that she still continues to do, but that's going to be so interesting to see what happens on that front. I'm so excited to see. Obviously, HBO Max doing its thing, dropping the first 3 episodes. Once again, that seems like a lot of stuff is starting to do that. I know, like, I think Hulu and Prime Video started to do that with some of their series, so I've only seen this episode. You know, just like a lot of stuff that drops all at once, I'm watching everything one at a time. So I'm excited to jump into episode 2 and see where it ends up taking us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.